At first light, they were back in the air and back on the mountainside. Their mission now is to search and recover, for there is no hope of rescue. All 150 people on board Germanwings flight 9525 are believed to have been killed when their plane crashed into this alpine mountainside. The steep valley is littered with thousands of plane fragments. Some are instantly recognizable as the remains of the Airbus A320 flying from Barcelona to Düsseldorf. The painstaking task that lies ahead is not without its own challenges. This remote crash site can only be accessed by air. The fragments that will be pieced together to solve this mystery are strewn over a wide area. Then there are the remains of the passengers that need to be recovered and returned to their loved ones.
The area is very large for the moment, and maybe there is bodies in all the part of the mountains. So it's quite difficult to take the bodies, and that's why the operation will be done by aircraft only. You know, by foot it's very difficult to go there. We are waiting for the family, and all the dispositive is done to take families and explain to them what happened and how we are working to find the bodies. That's the most important.
The search teams have had some success. Incredibly, among this wreckage, they've located and recovered the plane's black box. The flight recorder will explain what happened on board the plane that led to this catastrophic loss of life. This is it here. It's damaged, but locked inside the answers to this tragedy.
That's the information I've received. The black box is damaged, but it's possible to reconstruct it in order to examine it in the coming hours and determine from the examination of this black box a number of details about this catastrophe.
Some 24 hours after the crash, we're beginning to learn some more about the identities of the passengers, the men, women and children who never made it to their destination. It's now known there were some Britons among the dead.
The Germanwings accident is a terrible tragedy, and I want to offer heartfelt condolences to the families and friends of all those involved in the accident. We currently believe that 3 British people have been killed in this tragedy, but we can't rule out the possibility that there are further British people involved. The level of information on the flight manifest doesn't allow us to rule out that possibility until we've completed some further checks. We are in contact with the families of those known to have been killed. We're also in contact with the French, German and Spanish authorities, and once we have a clearer picture, we'll make a further announcement.
Can I just ask very quickly, is there any thought in government about checking the safety of the Airbus A320? It's a very commonly used aircraft and people will have some concern.
It is a very widely used aircraft. Of course, it has a very good safety record, and the normal aviation safety authorities will be looking at the facts of this case, and they and the Department for Transport will take any action necessary.
British resident Marina Bandres Lopez Bellio, 37 years old, and her baby son Julian were on board the flight. She had lived in Manchester for 7 years and was returning home from a family funeral. Her husband Pavel said simply, "We are devastated." Paul Bramley was 28 years old. He was from Hull and had been holidaying with friends in Barcelona. He was on his way home via Düsseldorf. His mother Carol said, "He was my world." Most of the other victims were German or Spanish, but there were nationalities from around the world on board the doomed flight. Australians Carol Friday and her son Greg were named as victims, by the country's foreign minister. 39-year-old Israeli Eyal Baum and 36-year-old Colombian Luis Aragon have also been named. Two of the first victims to be identified were German opera stars. Maria Radner was returning home with her husband and baby, and on the same flight, bass baritone Oleg Briak. But perhaps the loss is most concentrated here at this German school. 16 of its pupils were on their way home from Barcelona to be reunited with their waiting families. They'd been away for a week in Spain on a language exchange program. The children were barely teenagers. Most were just 15 years old.
You see me here shell-shocked and lost for words. Last Tuesday we sent 16 joyful young people and 2 young teachers on a journey. This was meant to be a happy journey, a student exchange with a school that we've partnered with for 6 years, but it has ended in tragedy. When we received the first phone call, we still had hope. Perhaps they'd missed the flight. Perhaps there were 2 flights from Germanwings at that time. Then shortly before 2 p.m. we were informed that our students and colleagues were on the passenger list. In our school, nothing will be as it was. Our sympathy first and foremost goes out to the parents who've lost their beloved sons and daughters, the grandparents who are missing their grandchildren, and all of the relatives. The husband of one of the teachers who died is at the school right now. They were newlyweds and had been married for less than 6 months. It is a tragedy that makes one speechless.
Nothing can take away the pain of losing a friend or close relative. We can only try to share that pain. And by sharing it together, we can find some kind of solace. We've spoken this morning to the head teacher and the teachers, and a crisis team of about 50 people have arrived. Counsellors are here to help support the students and also to assist the teachers and the parents to be there to give them the opportunity to grieve after such a terrible loss.
The grieving is spread across Europe. The sudden, inexplicable loss of life, marked in silent, solemn tributes. 1 minute's silence was held here in Cologne at the Germanwings headquarters. Staff at Düsseldorf Airport stood quietly to remember their dead colleagues and friends. And here in Barcelona, the same. The family's needs are the top priority, getting them to the crash site and bringing the remains of their loved ones down from the mountainside. But they will also want answers. Why didn't their loved ones make it to their destination? What happened to Flight 9525?
The reasons for the accident are at the moment completely undecided. But the black box, at least the first one that was discovered, is at the BEA and it is being examined. Possibly we'll have a first result from the examination and we'll be able to give it to you at the end of the afternoon. But then again, when you carry out these examinations, it takes some time to be able to obtain all the information from this black box.
Germanwings has described this tragedy as the darkest day in its history. The company needs answers too, and is working with the French and German authorities to try and find out why one of its planes fell from the sky.
On the ground, we have the best possible technical know-how that can be gathered from around the world to achieve results from the investigation as quickly as possible, however possible.
This is the same plane filmed in 2014. It set off from Barcelona in Spain at 9:01. It was expected to reach Dusseldorf in Germany nearly 2 hours later. The Airbus A320 reached 38,000 feet before it started descending, and then it lost contact with air traffic control at around 6,000 feet over the French Alps, less than an hour into the flight. It came down between Digne-les-Bains and Barcelonnette. The plane lost altitude at an alarming speed, 30,000 feet in less than 8 minutes. Flight tracker radar shows it climbed steadily over the Mediterranean after takeoff, and within an hour it had reached 38,000 feet. But almost as soon as it had got to cruising altitude, it began to drop rapidly. French officials say no distress call was issued. The Airbus A320 has a strong safety record, but that will now be under further scrutiny. It's been in operation since 1988. That's 27 years in the sky. Over that time, the aircraft has carried some 6 billion passengers. That's around 86% of the world's population. It's a short to medium-range commercial airliner, meaning it doesn't fly long haul, and there are currently 6,157 of them in operation, with one taking off or landing somewhere in the world every 2 seconds, every day. The A320 typically carries around 150 passengers, though it can fit up to 180 depending on the layout. It's not only used by Germanwings, which is part of Lufthansa, but also by many airlines including British Airways, EasyJet and Air France. The A320 has a strong safety record, although there have been 11 previous crashes that resulted in loss of life. 162 people were killed when Air Asia Flight 8501 crashed into the Java Sea in Indonesia over Christmas. The cause of that is still under investigation. And the plane that was guided into the Hudson River in New York by its pilot when its engines failed in 2009 was also an A320. French President François Hollande, Germany's Chancellor Angela Merkel, and Spain's Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy were flown to the crash site to see the devastation for themselves. It was a difficult, emotional trip. But it will be nothing compared to the journey the families of the dead passengers will make when they come to this mountainside where their loved ones met their fate. Ashish Joshi, Sky News.